Welcome to Restoration of Spirit. I'm Janet Kohl. On today's show, we're going to be learning about raw foodism and how to forage for food in nature, or your own backyard, or even your city's alley. So stick around because it's going to get crazy around here. I'm going to be eating some weeds. By definition, restoration of spirit is getting back to the life we were meant to live. We do this primarily in two ways, through self-care and self-discovery. And once we learn what our dreams and our passions are, some of us need a jump start to change. Restoration of spirit is about learning to discover and having the courage to live your dreams. Only through our passion can we live a life of joy. Joining us today will be Ariane Glazer and Richard Schneidig, two people who are extremely passionate about eating raw foods, as well as Milton Dixon, a permaculturalist who will be teaching us about how to forage for food. I'm here with Milton Dixon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
He's going to teach us about foraging for food in nature. But before we get started with that, can you tell us what you do and how that fits in with foraging?
Well, I'm a permaculturalist, and what that is, it's kind of complicated, but to kind of sum it up, it's systems thinking. It's thinking about the broader context of where we live and how we work with nature to provide for ourselves. So instead of taking from nature, we want to also give back to it so that it's always there for us.
Yeah, I like that. So what is foraging exactly? Because a lot of people don't even know what it is, and a lot of people wouldn't think about doing it in an urban environment.
Yeah, foraging is finding wild food. It planted itself, it grew there all on its own, and you go and harvest it. Food grows everywhere. You know, it's just up to us. It's that we need that knowledge to be able to recognize it and identify it. And a lot of the things that grow out in the world that are wild are actually related to the things that we cultivate. Here's yellow wood sorrel.
Is that a fancy name for clover?
No, this is very different from clover. We can look at some clover out behind us here. Notice the hearts, the heart-shaped leaves, and these leaves are edible, and they taste sour. They're actually really good. It's not related.
It's lemony.
Yeah, very lemony. It's not related to, but it's very similar to cultivated sorrel, French sorrel, which is also sour. It's got the same flavor. Broccoli, cabbage, kale, all those plants are actually in the mustard family, and there are a lot of wild relatives that grow and that are commonly found in urban settings, in rural settings as well.
Okay.
Anywhere.
So a lot of the raw food people think that wild food is actually healthier than even a cultivated, organic fruit or vegetable. What do you have to say about that?
I think it would depend on where you're getting it from. If you're foraging in a place that's had heavy traffic for, tens of years, at least back to when they had lead in fuel, then that soil could be contaminated with lead. And that could be a real issue.
So we don't want to do that.
Less healthy, right? And that's actually a big part of foraging is knowing the larger context of what's gone on before you in that place.
So the history of the land.
Was there any industrial activity? In orchards they commonly sprayed pesticides that had a lot of copper in them, and so those soils are now contaminated with a lot of copper.
So what's the best place to forage?
The best place to forage, and the place to probably get the most healthy food, would be just in the wild. The more untouched, the better. Where nature's allowed to do its own processes, and uninterrupted, that's going to have probably the richest soil and therefore the most healthful food.
Well, where in the United States can we do that? Are there certain places where we're not allowed to or where we shouldn't forage?
We should definitely be aware of who owns the property you're foraging on. It's best. I think the best place is to forage on your friend's property, if you or your own property, right? Your own property, your friends. I don't have any property, so I always have to rely on friends. Sometimes you can forage at national parks or state parks. Depends on their specific regulations. So you really got to be aware of what's going on, and you definitely don't want to go onto someone's private property and forage. Although you'd be surprised if you knock on their door and say, hey, I'm interested in foraging, can I can I
check out
walk
your
around
yard?
a little bit? Yeah. And I'll share whatever I get with you. You might be surprised at the reactions you get.
So a minute ago you mentioned the soil. So how important is that to finding healthy things in the wild?
Soil is what feeds the plants, and I think we have a common misconception that it's the nutrients, the nitrous, potassium, and phosphorus that really feed the plants, and that's totally not the case. The soil, the bacteria in the soil break down the organic matter and help release the minerals that are locked up in the soil and the clay or whatever the bedrock is, and feed the plants. They help extract that for the plants. So really, the more organic matter you have,
exactly,
the better.
Okay. How on earth did you get into foraging, especially in an urban environment like this? Because a lot of people aren't thinking of going and finding their food in a place like this, right?
Yeah. I've been doing this all my life. I actually grew up in a more rural area, and we would pick black raspberries and make pies, and that was always a lot of fun. And I remember my mom picking watercress from streams. You just see it in a stream and go pick it.
Wow.
So that was kind of in there, and then at some point, I kind of went about my life and went off, and I realized
forgot about that.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about it, and I realized that at one point this is something I really enjoy, and it really feeds me. I'm sometimes I find myself out picking crab apples off a tree and thinking, man, this is what I like to do, picking service berries. I really like this. I have those thoughts. Crab apples don't taste good until they've frozen. Once they've frozen, that actually brings out the sugar in the fruit. Just like broccoli or kale or collards, they're always sweeter towards the end of the season. That's when you're going to get the best.
But actually freezing, so like below 32 degrees?
Well, even just chilled, even getting chilled will make a difference. But what I have done with crab apples is there's some that I pick after the freeze in December. So it's the first warm day, or actually it's the last warm day of the season. You get that freeze and then it's warm and everyone's outside.
Right.
And I go out and pick the crab apples. The frozen, what I do is I juice them. And I've mix them with honey to make mead.
Well, it sounds like it feeds more than just your body. It sounds like it feeds your soul doing it.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that connection to the earth? And that's kind of one of the reasons why to forage, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It literally is a direct connection to the earth, right? Where you get your food, it grows in the earth. You pick it, you eat it.
We've been talking a lot about weeds because they seem to be just so common, and a lot of people complain that they overtake their garden and their yard. But what we really haven't touched on yet today is berries and other ornamental things that might have foods we can eat on them. So what is this here?
Yeah, this is a Japanese dogwood. It's a common ornamental, and the berries on this are actually edible and very good. Let's see if we can find a ripe one. These are good. Yeah, just.
It's really fruity and good. Reflecting back on your childhood and what you liked about eating foods that were grown in nature and reconnecting, how did you then turn that into an actual career?
It took a long time, and it was a slow realization. It's kind of hard to say. I just knew generally what I wanted to do, and it's something that you little by little work towards. It's not something that you say, I'm going to be a forager, I'm going to be a permaculturalist, and quit your job and go do. There has to be a base for that. You have to be able to support yourself, and you have to have skills that can help you support yourself. And so it's little by little, piece by piece. You have to know where you want to go, but then you have to know where you are and be able to take one
those
step
action
at a time.
steps to get there.
Yeah.
Raw foodism is the practice of consuming unprocessed, uncooked, and mostly organic foods as a large percentage of the diet. This includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and even sprouted grains. Raw foodism goes back about 100 years to Switzerland when a medical doctor named Maximilian Bircher Brenner cured himself of jaundice by eating only raw apples. He was already the inventor of muesli and went on to open a clinic called Vital Force, which is still in existence and treating patients today. Raw foodism takes many forms, Some raw foodists eat raw meat as well as raw dairy, while purists eat only fruits and vegetables. Raw foodists believe the easiest way to go raw is to just start juicing. If you're interested in learning more about raw foods, you can join a group or start your own and have a potluck and invite others to join you. I'm here with Ariane, who's the founder and coordinator of the Chicago Raw community. Hi Ariane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
So, how did you get into raw foods?
Well, I actually had a family member who was very ill, and it just made me think about health and, not only being healthy every day, but healthy long term and not being sick, not being on medication when I got to a certain age. So I just started researching and learning and talking to people, and I found out about raw foods, and I was like, well, let me try eating some raw foods. And lost weight, and I started to sleep really well and wake up feeling super refreshed in the morning, and I had energy all the time, no afternoon lows, I didn't need any coffee and no colds or flus, and just
so
a
you
lot
just
of
were
energy.
feeling better and better, so you just took it further into the next level.
Exactly.
But why don't you tell us exactly what is a raw food diet, or what is raw foodism?
Okay. Well, basically we believe in a natural lifestyle. So raw foodists live a natural lifestyle. So it's not just about food. It's also about spirituality and emotional and mental health and exercise. So it's like a complete package, living in tune with the earth, being more part of nature. But it really does start with what you put in your body, because you are what you eat. So we believe in eating natural, whole, unprocessed food. So basically food in its natural form, and vegan. So we basically eat vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. That's pretty much the whole diet, and it's actually quite diverse, and there's a lot that you can eat, even though it doesn't sound like it. Like seeds, you're like, what kind of seeds? How many seeds are there? There's hemp seeds, there's flax seeds, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds. Lots and lots of different seeds that you can eat.
Well, those are a lot of things that your average person doesn't really think about or think about including in their diet. But as far as the raw food definition, so is it just fruits and vegetables and things that are not cooked on one level and then taken to the next level? There's some people that, there's different types of raw food. So some people do actually cook the food or are allowed to cook it up to a certain temperature, right? But you don't even do that.
Well, we don't cook our food or heat it over 118 degrees.
Okay.
So raw food is anything. It's uncooked. It's raw, and also we call it living food because it has its enzymes, its energy. And if we do heat it, we dehydrate it, which is below 118 degrees, and basically it's just taking the water, the moisture out of the food. The majority of the raw food movement in the whole world, and it's really, really been growing for, I would say, the last 10 years, it's just exploded, even though there are people who've been eating raw for 30, 40, 50 years. We are raw vegans.
Okay.
So we're definitely ethically, not many people for health reasons, but overall it's for ethical reasons. We don't want to harm any animals, so we're vegans. So there is a tiny percentage, I would say, tiny that eat raw dairy and raw meat.
So most are vegans. Okay.
Yes. There's certain foods that we don't eat at all. So like potatoes, you don't eat raw, and beans, you don't eat raw. And we actually believe that grains cause mucus to build up in our systems, and mucus is a lot of the problem. The mucus causes a lot of health issues, mucus and inflammation. So we don't eat grains for the most part. Well, I started eating raw foods and being interested in around 2000. In about 2001, early 2001, and I didn't really know anyone who was vegetarian, let alone raw foodist. So I was all by myself. So I was just looking around for other people who were eating like me, and trying to meet other vegetarians. And so I started I had never belonged to a group or anything before in my life. And I couldn't find anyone who was raw, so I started going to some of the vegetarian groups. There were 2 Chicago vegetarian groups, so I started going to some of their events, and I met some people and talking to people, and hey, yeah, I like raw food too. And so I started having raw food potlucks at my house.
This is Milton, and he's made this beautiful, would you call it fruit leather?
Yes, fruit leather. It's wild choke cherries. I actually got it in Wisconsin. I was staying at a farm share, and so just picked it from the trees. What I did is I put it in the refrigerator for a couple days, and that helps sweeten the berries. And then I mashed it in a mortar and pestle. It smelled wonderful. It smelled like almonds, but that almond smell is actually hydrogen cyanide,
Interesting.
which is poisonous. And so in order to neutralize that, you have to cook it a little bit. So I put it in the dehydrator at 135. Because I put it at a higher temperature, that neutralizes some of the constituents of the cherries, which is, in this case, what we want. And because you're actually getting into the pits, it has a wonderful almond flavor.
Well, it looks great. I know everybody's dying to try it, so I can't wait either.
Yeah, have a bite.
All right, so I get to be the first here?
Yeah. Just a little corner there is fine, and yeah, just like I said, chew it until it starts to get really crunchy, and don't try too much more. But it's got a nice cherry flavor, nice almondy flavor.
Well, what would you say is the #1 benefit to raw foods?
I would say the #1 benefit to raw foods is energy. You really do get amazing energy. You just feel really good, and you can want to go and do fun things and be of service, and you can get a lot of things done. You just have a lot of energy.
I'm here with Rich, who's an advocate for healthy living. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So you're into raw foods as well. Can you tell me, how did you get your start with raw foods?
Well, it goes back to when I was a kid, and everybody lived, we were all raised on TV dinners, and this is pre-microwave, so a lot of families ate well, and a lot of families didn't, because they embraced the aluminum foil wrapped foods, right, frozen foods. Unfortunately, in our family, the lifestyle and stress, my parents died very young. We had a lot of cancer in the family. So when I was around 20, I gravitated toward eating as healthy as I could, and as reading and studying as much about it as I could. The thing that probably gave my parents and family members an early demise was probably the stress level that they lived at. And so you can eat a beautifully healthy diet, everything can be perfect chemically, but the stress causes contraction and eventually blockages in the body, which they've found is the major cause of illness, is the word blockage. And that blockage caused me to break down for about 12 years. Instead of living externally, you start to focus on your internals. So you have more quiet time, you go inside, and you get more sensitive to the way your mind is working. Are you running overtime? Are you taking out of your energy bank instead of putting it back in? Okay, so all those things reflect Eastern philosophies.
So the stress and the illness is really what was the tipping point for you to get into more of a healthy lifestyle and specifically healthy eating. But why did you take it all the way to raw foods as opposed to just overall eating healthy whole foods?
That's a really good point, and to say it simply, for 8 or 9 years, I disciplined myself to try different diets to remedy some of the diseases or disharmonies my body was expressing. And after I would try macrobiotics for a year, I found that they weren't solving the problem. And what's interesting is the only thing that solved the problem chemically was a switch to 100% vegan, uncooked diet. I spent about 6 years on a raw vegan lifestyle, and I found that in my lifestyle and work situation, even though a raw vegan diet is less limiting than a standard American diet, because you have this many foods that you eat, whereas in the standard American diet, it's dairy, sugar, processed flours, and animal proteins.
Well, what's your definition of a raw diet?
Definition of a raw diet would be something that is not heated to maybe over 110 degrees. The enzymes are intact. You can look at it two ways. You've got a carrot that comes right out of the ground, right? It's still bursting with life and energy. If you cut the carrot top off and you put it in water, it's going to grow the greens. The greens are going to grow back, so it's going to regenerate. That would be a very healthy raw
Carrot.
fuel, right? Carrot fuel. And then the other end is Wigmore, where you're actually sprouting greens and eating them as they come up. And then down the road you eat things like sweet potatoes raw and things like that. So yeah, it's an amazing thing. The one thing I found that was really powerful on the diet is, after 50 years of living on a vegetarian and standard American diet and struggling with brain chemistry issues and processing, all that went away. I cut 2 hours a night out of my sleep. I improved. I was taking, at age 54, I was taking yoga classes with 28-year-olds. I was in level 3 yoga classes. Unfortunately, I couldn't run any longer because I'd ruined my knees, but the energy level was amazing.
So what would you say is the biggest benefit to raw foods?
The biggest benefit is it cleans your body, it cleans your cells, it builds the blood cells, therefore building your organs. I had macular degeneration when I was on a regular vegetarian diet. That completely went away 3 years later, and they say it doesn't really easily go away. I think health and vitality are the #1 factor, benefit, that you're going to get from either a living foods lifestyle or a raw food lifestyle.
This is Paul, and he made this beautiful, colorful salad. Can you tell us what's in your salad?
Sure. We've got 3 different types of greens, including kale, tatsoi, and some red chard. It's got 4 different types of tomatoes, 2 different types of beets, cucumber, and probably the most interesting thing is the homegrown sunflower greens. So you can see a little example of one right here. I grew these in the last week, and those are really good, and they're fresh.
Really fresh.
I picked them today. So then I threw in some dressing, which is made out of hemp oil, lime juice, ginger, garlic. So that's really tasty too. So that's going to give it a lot of zest.
Yeah. Hi, I just have an heirloom tomato salad that I made tonight that I got at the farmer's market. For example, this is a green zebra tomato. It's green. This is a red zebra tomato. This is like it's a purple tomato. These are rainbow cherry tomatoes, actually from my yard. That one's a rainbow cherry. And on all the plants, it's yellow, orange, and red, and purple. So it's really pretty tomatoes. And I put organic cucumbers, Melrose peppers from the garden, and my basils from the garden.
You don't see these often and all the time. Where do you usually get these?
At the farmer's market. In Evanston, they have some organic farmers there, and they have a wide variety.
I think you're, well, #1, one of the problems with meat and dairy-based diet, a lot of those foods are congesting. Okay, so here's your cell, and here's a food that actually will give you fuel, it gives you energy, but it also takes away energy. It clogs the cell. Okay, you don't release all of it from your body. So you get bigger, wider, thicker. In my opinion, you need salt and sugar to stimulate the lack of connectivity within the cells. So the more meat you eat, the more salt, maybe wine, the more alcohol you need. Okay? People say to me, how come you don't drink? Why, don't you like wine? I don't have any desire for it, for alcohol. I don't have desire for salt.
I'm here with Robin, and she's made this wonderful, delicious, raw ice cream. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What's in it?
First of all, it's not actually an ice cream because it's a non-dairy frozen dessert. The base of it is hemp seed, and hemp seed is very rich in omega-3 fatty acids. It's a very nice 3-to-1 ratio. And what I'd like to say is actually what's not in it, because there's no sugar, no stabilizers of any kind. It's all organic.
So no preservatives, no artificial colors, no artificial flavors.
Right, nothing like that. There's very few ingredients. A lot of products have a lot of ingredients. This one is very, very few, just what's needed to make it.
So do you think that the foods that you sort of either crave or desire on that level shift when you go totally raw?
I think a lot of the cravings are markers of nutritional deficiencies in the system. So the reason you crave these things is because you're not able to have that communication between your cells.
I mean, the body sort of gets confused and starts actually wanting things it shouldn't have.
Yeah, well, right. And they say, the interesting thing is they say that one of the problems with the uptake of toxic minerals, like aluminum coming off of pots, it becomes a problem when you're lacking the vital nutrients. Your body takes in the toxic metals from the environment to compensate for not having the correct nutrients. So that to me is an amazing concept. And when you eat foods that, yes, they give you fuel, they power you, but those fuels also congest you. So the cleaner you eat, the closer to nature you eat, and when your body can evacuate through the different evacuation channels, can evacuate the excess proteins, the excess fats, the more it can evacuate, the better you're going to run. Okay,
Exactly.
The cleaner you're going to run.
Right. Well, raw foods to you is, based on what you're saying, more than just about the foods you're eating. What else does it really encompass?
Well, it starts with the basis, the focus of centering yourself in emotional and physical health. Okay, so number one, we were talking earlier, number one would be fresh air. So the one thing the body needs is oxygen. So I would focus on getting enough oxygen. It could be from some exercise is very important. And being in an environment of clean air, or putting air filters in your house and in your lifestyle. The second thing, of course, would be water, purified water. There was just a report in the newspaper in Chicago the other day that all these Brita filters and all these pure filters do not take all the lead out that the Chicago water has. Okay, so that stuff constantly goes on. So you should really have the best filtered water for yourself, because it isn't just what's in front of you now, it's what happens down the road. You know, and I think that's where the disconnect is. Is that people say, well, I'm fine, and then of course 8 hours they're sick.
Right. They're thinking short term as opposed to long term benefits.
Yeah, the pizza won't hurt me. Well, how do you feel the next day?
Yeah.
Versus
or
eating,
after years of eating pizzas.
Right.
Exactly.
And that equates to alcohol in our society too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for you, it's really about more of a healthy, holistic lifestyle, not just the foods, but also the community around the foods, mentoring with somebody who might be doing
really
what you already want to be doing, and learning from them.
I think somebody like Jack LaLanne, you know, who's been made fun of and he's extreme, but I think you take somebody like Jack LaLanne or something that lived to 91, and then his mentor was Charles Bragg, who died in a surfing accident at 90-something years old. His daughter had his body autopsied because they didn't know why he died. He was laying on the beach with a surfboard. They had it autopsied and they found that his organs were internally like an 18-year-old.
Wow.
He was hit by the surfboard in a surfing accident,
Oh, wow.
90-something years old.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, it's the vitality. It's not so much the longevity for me. I don't care about the time frame. I care about at that very moment how much energy I have.
You don't necessarily have to be willing to eat weeds, but remember, keeping an open mind is another way to restore your spirit. So until next time, I'm Janet Kohl, and this has been Restoration of Spirit. So what's something that you do to restore your spirit?
Well, I love coming to the potlucks, to tell you the truth. I'm a social butterfly, so I really love meeting new people and sharing and exchanging, and I really love the potlucks. They definitely revitalize.
So you're really all about that sense of connection and community.
I am. Yeah.
Great. So what's something that you do to restore your spirit?
Well, I meditate a lot, and I'd say that would be the #1 thing. If I were to say to somebody, you know, what would come first, I would say the meditation would come first. My spiritual life comes first. The diet supports that.
What's one thing you do to restore your spirit?
Forage.
Of course.